This is Dr. Gibbs. Welcome to week 5, part 2 of the Master Your Metabolism didactic course. So I ran out of space and I did not want to bore you guys to death. So I have put this last portion in a little separate video. And I'm just going to go ahead and get started because what I need to talk to you about is stress and how stress jacks with your metabolism. And this is a topic I thought we were going to get to during the weekly sessions, but we did not. So it's going to be a bonus. So here we go. All right. So stress. Is it just in our heads? No, actually, it is not. So this is the final topic that we haven't really covered yet about how your blood sugars can be stressed and your insulin levels can be affected by stress. And first of all, I need to define stress because stress is really anything that your body or your gator brain perceives as a threat to your survival. And there are really 3 different kinds of stress. The first one is external stress, you know, the typical cliche of running from the tiger. But, you know, more modern stress would be things like a near miss on the freeway or a car wreck. But it can also be physical stress like pain or malnutrition. This is one of the reasons calorie restricted dieting is so bad, is because your body perceives it as starvation. Short sleeping, inflammation, illness, even over exercising are stress. And then the third kind of stress is situational stress. And this is your modern first world circumstances, like a dark, deserted street or public speaking. But the problem with our modern situational stress is that they tend to be chronic. So work pressure, family stress, and just the always on nature of our current society, for example. And interestingly, it's how we think about these situations that causes our exact same physical stress reaction in our body. So unfortunately, really, all the studies show your body cannot tell the difference between these events and something that's actually literally threatening your life, like the house is on fire. Your body reacts exactly the same to your boss yelling at you as it would if your house was on fire. Is that crazy or what? The other thing is that we humans are the only species that has evolved the ability to worry about things that we can't control or about things that have not even happened yet. Chronic thoughts about, oh my gosh, the economy is crashing, or possible life events like, what if I get cancer? What if I get robbed? What if I can't pay my bills? This kind of worry, this chronic worry results in just as much stress as if the bad situation was actually happening to you. So what does cortisol do and why do we care? What is stress is what releases cortisol, and cortisol is our stress hormone. It is rapidly released from our adrenal glands as part of an acute stress reaction. And it rapidly raises our blood sugar by causing it to be dumped out of our liver to provide energy to our brain and our muscles. And it triggers insulin resistance to prevent the non-essential functions in our body from sucking up the high sugar so that it can be available for our active muscles so that we can run away from the danger. So cortisol also shuts off a bunch of non-essential functions. I say non-essential for immediate survival, like our gut function, our reproduction, growth, think hair and nails, healing, and immune surveillance. Except that because we're not actually running from danger, all that quickly released energy is not needed by our muscles, so it's getting packed on as visceral fat. And cortisol is not inherently bad. it's necessary for life. It helps us with daytime alertness and focus. It helps regulate our inflammation. People who don't make or have cortisol will drop dead if they overexert themselves or during major surgery because their blood sugar will drop too low to sustain life. But chronic elevations in cortisol affect our other hormones in pretty profound ways. So here's what's really interesting. The stress reaction to these modern day situational stresses come not from the circumstance itself, but about our thoughts about the circumstance. And those thoughts that trigger these 5 specific emotions: fear, anger, disgust, so we don't eat spoiled or poisonous food, shame, or sadness. When any of those 5 emotions arise, our brain reacts to those in a predictable physical way by triggering, first adrenaline, and then by triggering what's called ACTH. And ACTH is around all the time, but when it's triggered in a very high and fast way, you get a big burst of adrenaline and extra cortisol produced here in our adrenal glands. And the more prolonged that stress is, the more prolonged and persistent that high cortisol reaction then becomes. And some problems with our modern stress, beyond the fact that we frequently create it for ourselves, are that it's generally not just a once every few weeks kind of a thing. It's a pattern, a daily grind, a negative belief, or even a habit like being late all the time, for example, that can actually hijack the production of other hormones through prioritizing survival. And it downregulates a bunch of different hormones. So the signaling hormones are the ones like TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone. And you guys all know what that does. TSH goes to your thyroid gland and makes you produce thyroid hormone. And that's the other endocrine gland that's responsible for driving our metabolism. And when TSH gets suppressed by high cortisol, then the amount of thyroid hormone that you produce becomes less. Stressful situations can also directly put the brakes on our thyroid gland, and starvation is one that particularly comes to mind. And this is a big reason why calorie restriction as a weight loss strategy does not work, because your body basically thinks you're starving. And so it downregulates your metabolism. And the interesting thing about that is that these kind of thyroid changes typically do not show on the standard thyroid test that the doctors tend to run. Also, prolonged elevation of cortisol also turns down the pituitary production of these other signaling hormones called LH and FSH, or luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone. And these are the ones that produce the sex steroid hormones. And if you knock this off completely, then the production of your sex steroid hormones can slow down or even stop. Another reason why hormones get dysregulated when there's high cortisol is that the adrenal glands and the sex organs use the same precursors. All the raw materials come from cholesterol, and they go through something called pregnenolone and then progesterone. And then progesterone goes to all of these other hormones. And if cortisol is being made in high amounts and it uses up all the progesterone, it doesn't have enough then to make these less essential steroid hormones. The result being that sex steroid hormones can become irregular or even stop. And eventually your aldosterone can cut off as well. And that's when you get the low blood pressure and the fainting spells. which I know because I experienced those personally when I was under a bunch of stress. Anyway, so high cortisol is really a physiologic survival response that's gone haywire because we really aren't in 99% of our day, our survival is really not being threatened. But what happens with chronic elevated insulin levels is that they feed forward to raise cortisol up even higher. And another result of the response to high cortisol is something called elevated sympathetic tone. And I need to define that because it has nothing to do with sympathy. So this refers to the two different and opposite parts of the involuntary nervous system, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. And sympathetic nervous system revs us up for fighting or for running away. It makes us vigilant for danger. It's the fight or flight system, keeps you from sleeping deeply, for example. Parasympathetic is the relaxed part that helps your body digest food and heal and grow and do the other non-survival tasks. So rest and digest. So elevated sympathetic tone then is a baseline state that keeps your body ready for action, even when you're not consciously aware that there's a threat going on. And that results in anxiety, hyper alertness, high blood pressure, difficulty sleeping, and fluctuations in blood sugar due to the repeated release of adrenaline into your system. So a modern example of that would be like how you don't sleep well when your child is sick, or if you know you have to get up at 4 a.m. to catch a flight. So I think you may be surprised to see how many different problems can occur from too much cortisol. Because alterations in those sex hormones, because of high insulin levels, can also result in polycystic ovary syndrome. And the symptoms of that are chronic anxiety, depression, weight gain, menstrual irregularities, acne, male hair growth where you don't want it, and male hair loss where you do want it, among others. And it does work by disrupting the secretion of that luteinizing hormone that I showed you before. It stays chronically up high, but you don't get the normal cycle like you would get with your menstrual cycle. So you never get an LH surge that causes you to ovulate. Hence, polycystic, because the ovary never releases a single egg and all the follicles just hang around getting bigger and bigger. So the ovaries start making testosterone and too much of it, which causes several of those symptoms that I just told you. Then the high insulin levels, of course, increase the sympathetic tone even more by causing even more adrenaline to be released. And when that's ongoing, that's when you start getting this vicious cycle and you start getting stuck in this hyper alert and anxious state, which is hypertension, reduced heart rate variability, heart failure, ulcers, anxiety. Here's another one, changes in your immune system. So when you have high cortisol all the time that's trying to take down inflammation in your body, it reduces your body's ability to fight infection and cancer. And it does this by shifting into something called a Th2 cellular immunity, which are two different arms of the immune system. They kind of compete with one another. So Th1 fights cancer, fights bacterial infections. And this change is just exactly the same as what would happen if you take steroid shots or steroid packs, steroid pills, because of illness. But the problem is it leaves you victim or susceptible to allergies and autoimmune diseases and then cancer. So it's just swapping one kind of inflammation for a more persistent and more difficult kind of inflammation. But wait, there's more. Ultimately, the capacity of the adrenal glands to make any steroid hormone at all can be depleted. And what happens then is that you only have adrenaline left to use when you have an acute stress response. And this produces really severe and chronic anxiety. Due to repeated and chronic overstimulation, that becomes really, really chronic. And anxiety worsens sensitivity to pain. And guess what? Pain causes even more stress. And you can see how you can get stuck in this spiral of stress, high cortisol, high adrenaline, more pain, less serotonin. You better stop and explain that just real quickly, because when you have high cortisol, remember, it turns your GI tract down. It takes your gut kind of offline. And because 90% of the serotonin that you have in your body is produced in your gut, then you can really not have enough feel-good hormone and have all the anxiety hormones and really be unable to break free of this vicious cycle without either supplementation, therapy, coaching, or other deliberate techniques to manage stress. And the more stress we endure, the more we overuse our adrenals, and the longer and harder they work, the more depleted they get. And when your adrenals can't produce enough cortisol to meet your needs anymore, then you get problems like chronic fatigue syndrome, can't even talk anymore, fibromyalgia, PTSD, or burnout. So really, really severe, debilitating things, most of which are not recognized as legit. Well, PTSD is, but they're not. Chronic fatigue is not really recognized as a legit medical diagnosis. Adrenal fatigue, same thing. So there are supplements that you can take. Now, there's lots of other ways to help manage your stress, and not going to talk about those so much right this minute, because I've mentioned some of those in some of the other presentations that we've had. But there are a couple of nutrients that your adrenals need to stay healthy. And the first one is this adrenal glandular, and it is a hormone-free desiccated neonatal bovine adrenal cortex. And even the healthiest diet is frequently deficient in the cofactors that are in this supplement that allow our adrenals to run at the top of their condition. And this adrenal glandular is the #1 nutrient that I recommend. And you have to take it in a specific pattern, which I will show you, that enhances your body's hormone making ability. Because if you can't make enough, then that's when you go into that adrenaline cycle, which is really, really horrible. And you also lose the sex hormones, which is also a pretty negative thing. The next thing that we supplement tends to be pregnenolone. And pregnenolone is the precursor from which the cortisol, the aldosterone, and all the sex steroids are made. And even if you have high stimulation of cortisol, if you take pregnenolone, it actually bypasses that step that sucks it away and takes it and knocks it down from building your sex hormones and the other ones. Then the third category, because this is not just one thing, but it's minerals. And I already did mention these in the nutrition supplement section, but I feel like it's important to just mention them again because they're so important. So trace minerals like iodine, selenium, zinc, and others are essential cofactors in multiple processes, particularly in your thyroid and in your adrenal function. And then calcium and magnesium and zinc are stuff that you need in higher concentrations, and they actually have specific functions that can help you in other ways besides just your metabolic health. So let's talk about this adrenal glandular supplement a little bit more. So adrenal glands do not store hormones, but they do contain the cofactors and the nutrients that our own adrenal glands need to function. So this is a neonatal bovine adrenal cortex supplement that I recommend. And so the best way to get this is to eat animal adrenal glands, but nobody eats organ meat anymore, or maybe they do, but yuck, really? Most of us don't even eat sausage so much anymore. So how else can we get this? Well, there are several companies that sell similar products to the one that I am going to recommend to you guys. that contain cleaned and dried animal adrenal glands in capsules and tablets, but most of them are coming from old stressed animals, kind of like me. So the only brand I really recommend is this neonatal cortex. And the power of this glandular is really remarkable. Within a few weeks of starting, the adrenal glands will wake up and resume producing the correct amount of cortisol, aldosterone, and even sex hormones. So if you're really depleted, you might actually need to start off super, super slow or face the side effects of really rapid resumption of adrenal function, like bursts of inappropriately timed energy or really vivid technicolor dreams. But it's not going to make you toxic. It's not going to make you make too much cortisol because there's not actually any hormone in it. And the timing for this supplement is really, really crucial. You need to take it ahead of when the adrenal glands naturally make hormones. So let's look at that. So that means that the prime time to take the nutrition is when the sun first comes up and then at bedtime. And the reason why is because our levels of cortisol go from the lowest at about bedtime, about 8 to 9 p.m., and rise during the night and are highest about 2 hours after the sun comes up, and then goes gradually down. And this is the normal diurnal rhythm that we're going to try to mimic with this supplement when we take it. So please do not take it afternoon or with your evening meal. Those are really not the ideal times to take it. The next one is pregnenolone, and I do want to mention this a little bit more detail as well. So remember back when we said that steroid hormones are made from cholesterol. So if you think of it as an assembly line, the hormone cascade that makes all these different hormones, one step down the assembly line from cholesterol is something called pregnenolone. And pregnenolone will not be converted into other hormones unless your bodies need them. Whereas if you take progesterone, progesterone is directly a hormone. It has direct effects. And so if you don't need excess progesterone, then the way to get this taken care of is pregnenolone. And that's actually something you can buy over the counter too. So this is particularly important in an era where we're purposely taking drugs to lower our cholesterol, because it does bypass the first step in the hormone synthesis, which can get shut down. So micronized pregnenolone is another over-the-counter supplement that can reduce the steal of raw materials from the sex steroids and from aldosterone. It can also have some direct hormone effects. It can improve your sleep if you take it at bedtime, and that's actually when I recommend that it be taken. It can boost your mood, improve learning and memory, aiding in weight loss by inhibiting cortisol production, and can mitigate the symptoms of premenstrual syndrome, although a few people cannot tolerate it or have to add a second supplement if they have migraines as a result. Micronized is necessary because you don't absorb the non-micronized in your GI tract very well. So you need the micronized. And it should probably be taken under the supervision of a physician because you do want to check your sex hormone levels prior to starting and then every now and then while you're taking it, because side effects of too much can include these things that I have listed: insomnia, irritability, anxiety, acne, headache, mood changes, which are actually symptoms of too much testosterone. And it's that taking this can induce new production of sex steroid hormones. Here's another warning. These measures that I'm just discussing can restore fertility to people who were infertile. So if you are not eager to have a baby, please use birth control while you're taking these supplements if you have need of that. And then finally, because of the fact that the adrenal and the thyroid problems go hand in hand, if you are listening to this and you're not actually my patient already, you need to get your thyroid checked if you have significant symptoms. They will need to check several different labs, and the ones you need to check at least once are here: free T3, free T4, TSH, total T3, and reverse T3 ratio, and then thyroglobulin antibody and thyroid peroxidase antibody. In order to get these done, you will need to see a physician who is knowledgeable and does more than just check TSH. That is a whole other lecture series. But you really need somebody who has an up-to-date outlook on their thyroid management. And you need to also try to find somebody who will prescribe liothyronine or T3 replacement. It is becoming more common, so keep looking until you find that person. So with mindful and proactive management of the stress that we experience daily, and with tweaks to help our bodies physically cope with it, you can have some dramatic improvements in your mood, in your energy, in your focus, in your pain levels, and your sleep, which is amazing. So I am so glad that you guys like this. And I'm happy that you came along with me on this very cool CGM journey. You are all, of course, invited to attend the next run through free, and we're going to start again on May 7th. If you want to get notified about the next program, go ahead and get your name back on the list here. Actually, I think you guys will all get the emails for it as it comes up. But if you know anybody else who you think would be interested in this or who needs this, screenshot this and send it to them and say, hey, look, you need to do this. It's really, really helpful. It's about as expensive as your cup of Starbucks every day for a month. So that's all I got for you. And thank you for your attention. I would love, love, love for you guys to fill out the exit survey, which I will be emailing to you. Thank you very much for your attention. And I will talk to you guys very, very soon, hopefully. And it's been really, really fun.